From the heart of Bills Mafia, this is Alex Brasky Unfiltered, Buffalo's most polarizing football show. No hot takes for clicks, no sugarcoating, just bold opinions, insider perspective, and unfiltered Bills talk. Let's go!
Hello, everybody, and welcome back by popular demand. This is Alex Brasky Unfiltered, your first stop for raw, honest takes on the Buffalo Bills and more. Please like, share, rate, and subscribe to the podcast, and also leave a comment on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Had a little bit of change in plans this week. Was initially expecting to go live after the first training camp practice and really each training camp practice, but then I was able to score some tickets to the first 3 days. I'll be out there again tomorrow. So we'll be doing these podcasts as often as I'm able over the course of the next few weeks. Probably going to pick up as their time, the Bills, that is, time at St. John Fisher University comes to a close. So stay tuned for those post-practice podcasts coming up as we progress through the preseason. But for now, as I've been fortunate enough to get those tickets to training camp, I've been doing my live reactions from the site and also post-practice reactions on my YouTube channel, as well as my TikTok X account. So you can find all of that stuff there during and after practice. But now I'm ready to share everything I learned over the first 3 days of training camp. And it's been an interesting start to training camp. There's been a few hot button topics to discuss. Keon Coleman's rough start, Gardner-Johnson's injury, DJ Moore and Josh Allen flourishing with their connection. So a lot to get to on tonight's podcast before the Bills retake the practice field on Monday morning at 8:30 a.m. in Rochester. Let's start with CJ Gardner-Johnson's concerning injury as I share this podcast to the masses using my Alex Brasky Unfiltered show page. Let me get a quick retweet here to spread the news. But starting with CJ Gardner-Johnson's injury, a concerning injury undoubtedly for the Bills' free agent safety. He had been one of the Bills' best defenders through the first several days of training camp. He goes down with what appeared to be a non-contact injury on day 3, was running after Skylar Bell, who was the ball carrier on the play. And then after the play ended, he went to the ground, didn't see anything that led to the injury. So that's what leads me to believe it was non-contact. But there has been some good news that has surfaced regarding CJ Gardner-Johnson's condition since he sustained that injury. And Adam Schefter has reported that tests revealed a lower calf strain rather than what was initially feared to be an Achilles tear. And that certainly would have been worrisome for CJ Gardner-Johnson. We've seen Michael Hoyt come back from that relatively quickly, but at the same time, that is a significant injury that really saps athleticism from professional athletes and makes it difficult for them to return to their original form. So good news that it wasn't an Achilles injury. It was a lower calf strain as reported by Adam Schefter, but still, I'm expecting him to miss some time. So it's a big deal. A new player on this team trying to fit into a new system that the Bills are also installing this year under first-year defensive coordinator Jim Leonhard. So this is a concern no matter the significance of the injury. Now, who's going to replace CJ Gardner-Johnson in the short term or the long term if it does turn out to be one of those grade 3 or I believe it's grade 3 calf strains? I believe that's the most significant. That could lead him potentially to miss the start of the regular season. But during practice, it was Geno Stone and Damar Hamlin getting the first reps in there with the first team in replacement of Gardner-Johnson. And I'm not so sure that's what Bills fans wanted to see. Jalen Kilgore, the rookie 5th-round pick, has been so impressive through the first 3 days of training camp. And I understand you want to get the veterans out there. You signed Geno Stone in free agency for a reason. Damar Hamlin, also another experienced player. So somebody goes down in the middle of a practice, you're probably going to put those veterans in there. But moving forward, if Gardner-Johnson is to miss extended time during training camp and potentially beyond, I would really, really like to see Kilgore get some work with the first team. He had a number of pass breakups and also an interception of Shane Buechele during 11-on-11 work on Saturday, and really has been a steady contributor for the Bills defense, albeit against the second and third team offense. So you kind of have to take his performance with a grain of salt, but at the same time, for a 5th-round pick that a lot of fans, media, draft analysts were high on, the way that he's performed early in camp leads me to believe that this could be a potential long-term answer for the Bills at the safety position. And boy, that would be huge for them. They have Cole Bishop, who they drafted a couple of years ago in the 2nd round. And then if they're able to work Kilgore into the starting lineup, whether it be this year or in future years, that could be a really, really strong tandem moving forward. And Kilgore can do a lot more than just play safety. He could fill in a nickel cornerback, can return punts. So I really want to see more of Jalon Kilgore, especially as CJ Gardner-Johnson is to miss some extended time with his calf strain. And Kilgore hasn't been the only rookie that has made his presence felt at training camp. Along with the 5th rounder, an undrafted free agent cornerback has burst onto the scene to help out the Bills secondary. Kenny Walker has been making life extremely difficult for Bills wide receivers, Shane Buechele and Kyle Allen, working against those 2nd and 3rd team defenses. He's just a mechanically sound player. He's got good size, really moves around like a veteran out there. And I'll say the same about another of the Bills rookies momentarily. But he's just been rock solid so far, has Walker. And maybe there's something with that Walker name in Bills rookies. Deion Walker last year having a fine first season. And now Kenny Walker really showing out at training camp in the early going and making his presence felt and making a push for a roster spot. The Bills are desperate for cornerback help, as we've discussed as ad nauseum, and they haven't re-signed Tre'Davious White yet. So Kenny Walker at this point is putting himself in position to be that final cornerback added to the roster when it's all said and done. On my initial 53-man roster projection, I had Toriano Pride Jr., the 7th round pick by the Bills this year, making the team. But based on the early days at training camp, Kenny Walker has been the most impressive depth cornerback as far as Toriano Pride to Corey Couch, Jordan Dunbar, and Walker. Walker's been the one that has stood out most among that group, and really a fine start for the undrafted free agent. The Bills have some history finding some diamonds in the rough with those UDFAs, so Walker could be the latest in a line of some good finds for Brandon Beane and the rest of the Bills front office. I'm wondering if the Bills are still waiting to bring back Tre'Davious White. We've heard some rumblings throughout the past week of that potentially being the case down the road, but we'll have to wait and see if Brandon Beane is inclined to make that call, or if White is willing to come back and either compete for a starting role or sit and wait in the wings as a depth contributor. And he had a great year last year, wouldn't cost a lot. And Davison Igbinosun, the Bills' 2nd round pick, who's supposedly battling with Maxwell Hairston for the role of cornerback 2, he hasn't impressed me all that much through the early stages of training camp. I know he had a good mini camp that was really raved about by a few media members, but he got beat by DJ Moore over the middle on day 2, I believe it was. He did respond with a pass breakup, I believe the next day of practice going against DJ Moore. So a little bit of revenge there for Igbinosun, but he's been beat a couple of times and just doesn't seem to really have it all together at this early stage in his career. And I guess that can be expected. It's the first 3 days of training camp, so don't want to overreact too much, but I haven't been all that impressed with Igbinosun from what my eyes have told me, and Walker has really stood out a little bit more. But like I said, you kind of take it with a grain of salt going up against lesser competition during the course of practice. So we'll have to keep an eye on the cornerback competition with Maxwell Harrison and Igbinosun, and then whether or not Walker makes the team, they add a Tre'Davious White, or somebody else ends up making a run at that depth role as time goes on here. But I truly, I've said it before, I think the Bills are setting themselves up for a potential disaster if they don't bring in another cornerback. I like Walker, but I'm not so sure you could trust him to fit in a big spot if, let's say, Maxwell Hairston gets hurt again and then Igbinosun is unavailable. We've seen the Bills lose cornerbacks at key times in the postseason in past years, and I'm just not so sure what the Bills have right now can be relied upon if they're put in that position. So I like what I've seen from Walker, like what I've seen from Kilgore, but I would still like to see the Bills add another cornerback to really fill out that secondary. But CJ Gardner-Johnson avoiding disaster, big news for the Bills, but we'll have to continue to monitor that as well. Another player, along with Gardner-Johnson, who has been great on the defensive side of the ball, another player who's been great on his side of the ball, the offense, DJ Moore and Josh Allen have been super, super impressive connecting throughout training camp. I was one of the biggest detractors of the DJ Moore trade when it was first made, sending a second-round pick for a wide receiver coming off the worst season of his career. But what I've seen from the Bills' top wide receiver through the first 3 days of training camp is he and Josh Allen look like they've been playing together for years. The chemistry, there were a few misses on the first day of training camp, but ever since then, they've really, really been on point and gotten it together and are giving this Bills defense fits. There was a play on day 3 where Josh Allen was flushed out of the pocket. I want to say it was Andre Jones Jr. who flushed him out, and he's running to his right, and DJ Moore breaks open at the last second. Allen finds him. I think it would have been first down yardage, and I think that's what you're going to see from this duo this year, that security blanket level of play from DJ Moore, his ability to get open, his ability to present himself late in the down for Josh Allen when he's working off script. I think that can be a big boon for this Bills offense. And look, is DJ Moore going to be around for the next 5 or so years? No, but maybe this year or maybe the next couple of years, he can give you some of that level of play that he offered a couple of years ago, whether it be with the Bears or with the Carolina Panthers. And maybe he can regenerate some of that 1,000-yard ability that he once put forth. So what I've seen from DJ Moore so far is really starting to sway me on the trade. I still hate giving up the second-round pick for a player of his age and apparent caliber coming off last season. But as time has gone on and I've watched DJ Moore operate at training camp, it's really, really been impressive. Now, whether that's a product of the Bills' cornerback room and its weakness beyond Christian Benford, we'll find out as training camp goes and once the preseason starts and maybe DJ Moore gets out there against some better competition or just out there against other competition, other teams during the preseason or the start of the regular season. But early on, those few misses have been wiped away very, very quickly by Moore's performance the last couple of days at training camp. And a lot of people have brought up that Moore is probably the best receiver that Josh Allen has played with since Stephon Diggs. And there's evidence of that early in training camp. I haven't seen a lot from Skylar Bell. That has left me maybe not concerned is the right word. It's left me a little bit wanting more, but I have not wanted anything more from DJ Moore as he's really put on the show through the first 3 days of training camp. And I think he's really going to help this offense this year. And that's certainly me singing a different tune than I was at the start of training camp. And we all saw what Keon Coleman did last year and the overreactions to his training camp performance. And I'm a little bit hesitant to do the same with DJ Moore, but being a veteran who's proven it before, maybe all those people who said that him and Caleb Williams weren't a good fit together, maybe there is some credence to that after all. But back to Skylar Bell, he's had a little bit of a quiet training camp so far. I think he's been a little bit inhibited by the quarterback play that he's had to play with. Shane Buechele and Kyle Allen have been pretty piss poor throughout the course of training camp. I mean, the Bills' strategy of picking up Josh Allen's best friends and using them as their backup quarterbacks. Josh Allen never gets hurt, but if he gets hurt, it's really going to come back to haunt them this year. I'm not saying that the Bills are ever going to have a chance to go far if Allen is to miss multiple games or extended time, anything like that. But in a one-game scenario, if you need Kyle Allen or Shane Buechele to go in and stem the tide and maybe just manage a game, get you to a big win late in the year to continue your playoff push, I think the Bills are in a whole lot of trouble, but I'll digress on that. Back to Skylar Bell. It's been tough to judge because of that quarterback play, but one thing that seems to stick out with him is just great hands, and it doesn't seem to be too big for him, the step up from a low-level college team at UConn to the NFL. He seems to be fitting in fairly well in terms of the way he looks during individual drills, running alongside his teammates, and he is finding himself open in the secondary. He's just being missed by the quarterbacks that he's playing with. So not a lot to report from Skylar Bell, but certainly some signs that show you what he's potentially capable of as his career continues. But they did use Skylar Bell and DJ Moore, for that matter, on end arounds or jet sweeps. And I know that Bills fans aren't too fond of those, the way that they've worked out under Joe Brady as offensive coordinator, but they also ran a double reverse pass to Khalil Shakir that ended up working out well. So there could be a lot of trickeration from this Joe Brady offense this year. And maybe that's one way they get Bell involved. I don't think he was considered much of like a gadget type receiver, but with the wide receiver room as crowded as it is now, with the addition of DJ Moore, drafting Skylar Bell, Joshua Palmer coming back off of injury, you might see the Bills try to find some creative ways to get Bell the football, and maybe using him on those jet sweeps and end arounds will be the way that they do so. But speaking of the crowded wide receiver room, I've been impressed by Joshua Palmer. Didn't do much the first few days, but he's moving around well, not showing any signs of lingering injuries. He missed some time during the offseason workout program, but returned before that concluded, and now has been out there in full for training camp. And he made what was maybe the best catch and the biggest play of training camp so far on day 3. Josh Allen went deep down the left sideline. Palmer beat his man, extended to make a great catch. I thought it was initially a one-handed catch. I was on the opposite side of the field, very far away from the play, so I didn't get a clear look at it, but the Bills posted some good video of it, and he goes up with two arms, I should say, and just fully extends and makes a beautiful catch in stride for the touchdown. Booted a punt after in celebration. So Joshua Palmer, somebody who I thought that was really left for dead this offseason and didn't have much of a chance to reinvigorate what the Bills thought they were getting when they signed him last offseason. Like I said, it's only 3 days of training camp, but that's what we're here to react to. And Joshua Palmer's catch, that just goes to show you what he could contribute to this offense. I think he's undoubtedly the Bills' second most talented receiver behind DJ Moore. Maybe you put Khalil Shakir in that conversation, but I kind of look at Shakir as a different type of player than a Moore and a Palmer, obviously due to his position as a slot receiver and the way that he works himself free in the offense. I think when it comes to wide receiver talent and ability, Joshua Palmer's ceiling is the second highest of any wide receiver on the Bills roster behind DJ Moore. Now we'll have to see how that translates to game days. We saw last year Palmer impressed during practices and training camp and really struggled to contribute when he was healthy and on the field last year, not to mention the injuries he dealt with. But I think if he can avoid the injury trouble he dealt with a year ago over the next few weeks and during the early stages of the season, I think he should be that wide receiver 3 for the Bills rather than Keon Coleman. He's better in terms of talent than Keon Coleman, and I think he's just a more consistent player. You didn't see that last year, but I think when it comes to consistency, I think you can trust Joshua Palmer in terms of getting open down the field, breaking off his routes at the right time and in the right area, and just doing the right things that are expected of a wide receiver. And I'm interested to see how that plays out as we go here. But speaking of Keon Coleman, that rough start to training camp that I'm sure a lot of you heard about, dropped the first pass of team drills at training camp, went right through his hands, dropped to the wet turf. A lot of people blaming the rain, but there were other wide receivers making catches throughout the day, a lot more difficult than the one that Coleman tried to make on the first pass of that practice. So I'm not sure there's much of an excuse there for Coleman or a leg to stand on in terms of the rain causing the drop. I think it was more so just maybe a lack of concentration or just an error on his part. But I think this team needs, instead of featuring him like they've tried to last training camp and immediately to start this training camp and all the comments we've heard this offseason, I think the Bills need to do whatever they can to take the spotlight off of Coleman rather than keeping it on him as brightly as they have over the past several months since last season, and really since the middle of last season. And I get it. The media is going to ask their questions to Brandon Beane, Joe Brady, Pete Carmichael, and his teammates, and they have to answer. And they're not going to blow over it, because then that will be a mountain will be made out of that. So they have to choose their words carefully, but it seems like everything that they say about Coleman is directed toward being a soundbite. And like that's the motivation of their analysis of Coleman, just to create a positive soundbite and have people write a story about him and keep the positivity up, where I think it would be a much better situation for Coleman if he just kind of faded into the background here over the next several weeks. I just feel that, like, why can't the Bills just give a few vague responses like they do with a lot of their other players? They always seem to try so hard to pump up Keon Coleman. It's like how they introduced the new Nickel City jerseys. It's like they're trying to sell you something with Coleman every time they mention his name, and it just comes across as disingenuous and not believable. And then you see him on the field and he's dropping passes, and really haven't heard much from him since. So I just think Coleman needs to fade into the background here a little bit and let his play do the talking, rather than his teammates and coaches constantly going on these long explanations of how smart he is and how mature and how great he's done this offseason. I mean, enough's enough. We've heard the propaganda over and over and over. Give it a rest. Let him fade into the background a little bit, and then maybe his play starts to do the talking as the season goes. Just stop manufacturing all of these compliments. It's not doing him any good. If anything, it's putting more pressure on Keon Coleman, and I think that was probably a product, or the dropped pass to start training camp, probably a product of that increased pressure that's been placed on Coleman over the past several months. So I just feel that the Bills need to do whatever they can to kind of take some of the heat off of Coleman and allow him to blend in with the rest of this Bills offense, rather than having him be under the microscope almost every second he's on the field. But it's just, propaganda is really the perfect word for it, because I truly feel like the Bills are trying to sell me snake oil every single time they mention Keon Coleman's name. But elsewhere in the passing game, the Bills are starting to use their running backs a little bit more out of the backfield as pass catchers. It's that Pete Carmichael, Joe Brady influence going back to both of their time in New Orleans with Sean Payton, Alvin Kamara, Darren Sproles, really good receiving running backs, and really helped that Saints offense turn into one of the best in the NFL, and eventually a Super Bowl championship winning offense as well. So I wonder why they haven't gone to that more in the past. Brady's been around these past couple of years. It could have been a concern with James Cook's pass drop issues, but I think he's gotten that under control. You saw a couple, I think, last year, but you've seen Cook be used a little bit more throughout training camp out of the backfield. Ray Davis has even made a couple of catches, and Ty Johnson as well, who I think could really be another added element to this offense. You've seen the improvements that they've made to the wide receiver core, but if they're able to use Ty Johnson out of the backfield as a pass catcher, that could just give them another threat on third down, and another, I mentioned this word or this phrase earlier, security blanket for Josh Allen. And not only that, I think it's just easy yardage when you're struggling to kind of find your rhythm throughout the course of the game. The Bills need to find that easy button, and I think the running backs could really fill into that role nicely. And James Cook particularly, he had such a big year on the ground last year, and no one considers him one of the best running backs in the league in terms of that top 1, 2, or even 3, because he's not used as much in the passing game. But if you start to get him involved in the passing game, not only is that going to help the offense, that's going to help Cook take a step forward in terms of how he's viewed around the league. So I think there's a lot coming in terms of what the Bills expect to do with their running backs in the passing game, and I'm excited for it. And not only those top three, but Ian Wheeler, a free agent that the Bills signed, a former UFLer, has made a couple nice plays too. He's had some juice early on during training camp, and that leads me to believe maybe the Bills should consider trading Ray Davis. I don't know how much you could get out of a 26-year-old running back who's already 26 years old, entering his third year in the NFL. I'm not sure how hot of a commodity he is, but Ian Wheeler has been impressive, and he's shown ability at the UFL level and even at the NFL level during preseason games for the Chicago Bears a few years ago against the Bills. So if you could get anything for Ray Davis, I know he's valuable as a kick returner, and he was an all-pro kick returner last year, but you could find other kick returners. I think those are relatively a dime a dozen, and I think it really comes down to kick coverage and kind of how you align things in that specialty that allow players to flourish. You have the Dante Halls and Devin Hesters and the great returners of yesteryear, but I'm not so sure Ray Davis is to that level. I think he may have just been a product of the Bills really doing a nice job in that kick coverage that allowed him to really work himself to a fine season last year. But I would like to see Ray Davis as a trade candidate. I think the Bills are set with Cook and Ty Johnson as their top two. And now with Ian Wheeler, like I said, starting to have some juice during training camp, I think he might be able to fit in to that third slot on the Bills roster behind their top two options. But speaking of Joe Brady's influence on the Bills, and particularly the running backs being used in the passing game, he's had a little bit more influence on other changes that have been made at Bills training camp so far, and a few minor differences between how Brady's running things and how Sean McDermott arranged things previously. First is the earlier start time. We discussed that. The Bills are also wearing different colored practice jerseys. They've swapped the blue and the white for the offense and the defense, but the biggest takeaway I've had is the focus on load management. The first off day was after just the first 2 days of practice, and then another off day on Sunday before Monday's practice. And there's also been these extended breaks amid practice. So I think the Bills, one of their concentrations and all this alignment that they spoke about this offseason was really in an effort to transition to more load management and less putting their players in harm's way. I think Sean McDermott was a big proponent of live action periods and team sessions to really gear up the team for the start of the regular season. And we've seen the team go away from that a little bit, I think, this year, and really take a step back and try to favor players' health. Now, it didn't work out so well in CJ Gardner-Johnson's situation, but we haven't seen a bunch of injuries during camp, not even players hitting the turf. So I think there's been an extra concentration on being careful with these players and making sure everybody makes it through training camp unscathed and ready for the regular season. And another departure from the McDermott era, is the disciplined approach that McDermott had previously instilled in this organization. Not so much anymore. We heard from Alec Anderson, I believe it was in a conversation with News 8 last week, and he basically said that Joe Brady is the substitute teacher that we all took advantage of when we were younger. And he called him the fun uncle that's basically letting the players get away with murder in the locker room. And you've already seen it with CJ Gardner-Johnson. Brady had to shut down his live stream, and I know that kind of goes against what I just said with Brady asserting himself and having Gardner-Johnson end the live stream. But the fact that Gardner-Johnson felt it was okay to live stream from the locker room, I think just goes to show you that things could get away from Brady pretty quickly here if the Bills don't get off to a solid start, not only among the fan base who will be calling for his job. And I'm sure we'll harken back to that video with Alec Anderson if the Bills start off 0-2, 0-3, 1-4 or something like that. But I just don't think that this is the right mentality for Brady to be putting into practice here with the Bills entering a Super Bowl or bust season. I'm not so sure that McDermott's way of doing things was the best course of action either. I think maybe a little bit stale, a little bit tight at times in that locker room. But the looser things get with Brady, I think the more concerned that I'm starting to get with things potentially going off the rails down the road. And you'd hate to see that happen in a coach's first season, because with all the expectations placed on Brady and the Bills this year, it's almost like it's almost like they're trying too hard to go away from Sean McDermott, and I really think it's going to come back to cost them. And I think some of the things that really kept this team together and on a successful track the past several years have gone by the wayside in the early going, and I think we're going to see some negative byproducts of the changes that Brady has made in terms of the mentality in that locker room sooner rather than later. All right, a quick break. Please like, share, rate, and subscribe to the podcast. Also, leave a comment on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It would really help me out, help spread the word about the show, trying to get things off and running here. We're on our third show of this new podcast, so trying to build the audience and really deliver some quality information as well, and shake off the rust when it comes to my time in front of the microphone and the camera. I didn't spend a whole lot of time in front of the microphone or the camera last year. I started the season on my podcast, but quickly terminated it after a few weeks due to other career opportunities. So getting back into the swing of things, and a rate, share, a subscription, anything you can do on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast, or retweet on Twitter, anything would be much, much appreciated. All right, but let's get back to the defensive side of the ball and the linebacker position specifically. And there's been an interesting development in a battle for a depth role. To begin training camp, I released my 53-man roster projection, and I think the prevailing thought was that Joe Andreessen would clearly be the fourth linebacker on the roster behind Terrell Bernard, Dorian Williams, and Kaleb Elarms-Orr. But instead, it's been Keontae Jenkins who has been lining up alongside Elarms-Orr during individual drills, which leads me to believe that he's going to be inside that top four once the regular season starts. And that could push Joe Andreessen out of a roster spot entirely. He's been a good soldier for the Bills these past couple of years, an undrafted free agent out of the University of Buffalo. Really, really nice story. But Keontae Jenkins impressed during his time on the field and during practices last year. And I think the Bills think that they have something good in the former undrafted free agent, and they're starting to insert him into that rotation a little bit more than Andreessen. So it could be getting late early here for Andreessen in terms of his fight for a roster spot. And it'll be interesting to see if he can continue to make plays as he did. He intercepted Shane Buechele, I think it was Buechele, a couple of days ago, and that was one of the biggest plays early in training camp. So if Andreessen can continue to find his way to make plays and make an impact on this Bills defense, he might be able to turn around that conversation. But for right now, I think it's Keontae Jenkins who's set to earn that job as the team's final linebacker on the roster, one of the two backups to whoever winds up being the starter, whether it be Dorian Williams, Terrell Bernard, Kaleb Elarms-Orr, whatever trio they settle on. I think Jenkins could be that fourth linebacker in that rotation. He signed with the Bills as a UDFA last year, played in 3 games. Most of his work was on special teams, played 39 special team snaps, 23 defensive snaps. So not a whole lot of action to go off of, but in his limited time, I think he left an impression on the Bills front office, and it looks like they're trying to boost his role a little bit within this Bills defense. He's not a household name. He's not going to turn into Brian Urlacher overnight, but the Bills seem to like what he has to offer. So it'll be interesting to see how they use their linebackers during the preseason, and whether Jenkins is out there with Elarms-Orr on that Bills second team, or perhaps Dorian Williams on that Bills second team, or whether it'll be Andreessen once the preseason games begin. Bernard and Williams both sat out of team drills the first 2 days of training camp. And I think that was a product of the load management I spoke on earlier, just in an effort to keep both of those players who dealt with injury this offseason, and in Bernard's case, dealt with injury last regular season. I think they're trying to keep them upright and put them in the best position as possible to remain healthy throughout training camp and the preseason. We did see them work into team drills on day 3. I think it was day 3 was the first time that they worked into team drills, but early on they were held out. So a little bit of progression there from Bernard and Williams, and Williams is going to have to start showing something soon because the Bills' rookie 5th rounder, Kaleb Elarms-Orr, has really been impressive early in camp. And Jim Leonard, the Bills' defensive coordinator, spoke about it at the microphone, just spoke about how he really seems ready, pro-ready, and ready to take on a leadership role as well within the Bills' huddle. He has command of that huddle and has been doing a nice job working his way up the pecking order in his early stages on the Bills roster. But if I were to handicap that competition between Elarms-Orr and Williams at this point, I think I'd give the edge to Elarms-Orr right now, just because we haven't seen Williams in the early going and how impressed I've been with Elarms-Orr. But with all that said, the pads have not gone on yet. So I think we'll get our true first test of what the defense looks like, how physical Elarms-Orr can be in that undersized frame once the pads come on in a few days here at Bills training camp. But hey, 3 days in, it seems like the Bills got a good one in the 4th round. I think I might have said 5th round earlier, but 4th round pick, Kaleb Elarms-Orr. It'll be interesting to see how he fares once live action starts. His biggest play has been a pass breakup he made on Dalton Kincaid. Did a great job reading Josh Allen's eyes, remained patient, was able to leap up and knock the ball away from Kincaid. So impressed by Elarms-Orr, but let's see once the pads come on and how he fares once that happens. There's not been much to learn from the team's line play due to the pads not being on as well. 1 second. Okay, well, that's not good. Not much to learn from the team's offensive line play or defensive line play for that matter, just due to the fact that the pads have not come on yet. But Bradley Chubb has made a strong impression so far. He's been getting pressure, impacting the run defense as well. Like I said, we have to temper everything that we've seen from linebacking play and edge rushers and defensive linemen, offensive linemen, but Chubb has been in position to make plays regularly, and that's an encouraging start for the Bills' big offseason addition. A bit of a slow start for TJ Parker. Haven't heard a lot from him. He's moving around fluidly out there, so it's not like he's overwhelmed or anything. I just haven't noticed any big moments from from TJ Parker quite yet. So I think we'll have to wait and see on that. And like I said, once the pads go on, maybe we start to see a little bit more from TJ Parker. And conversely, if we don't see a little bit more from TJ Parker, then that would be concerning at that time. But in terms of as it stands right now, I just haven't seen all that much to latch on to in terms of his performance early on in training camp. So we'll continue to monitor TJ Parker as I work through a technical issue on my computer as I go through this podcast. Hopefully, I don't lose everybody. Let's see. It says, okay, so tomorrow. All right. Hopefully that fixes it. Not quite sure if it did, but we're going to power through the rest of this. Hopefully we can get out of here before any of the technical issues do arise potentially in a few minutes. But outside of TJ Parker, another of the Bills draft picks that have impressed me early in camp, probably the most impressive Bills rookie, or maybe the most impressive Bills defensive lineman early on. Zane Durant had a couple of sacks on day 2. Quickness, burst off the line, very, very impressive. And much like Connie Walker, but at a different position, he moves around really, really well out there. You don't see rookie when you see Zane Durant moving around post snap. He's got good burst. He's able to sneak his way past these offensive linemen, has a little bit of a savvy movement to him. So really impressed by Zane Durant and impressed by Michael Hoyt's progress as well. About 9 months after an Achilles tear and already a full participant is Hoyt. So the Bills pass rush has the pieces to be better this year. If they can stay healthy, I think we see more sack production from that unit in 2026. But all right, that'll do it for training camp updates. For more, visit my YouTube channel and head to the shorts section on that page. Or you can head over to my TikTok account where I have posted clips from each practice along with my immediate takeaways following each session. But before we get out of here tonight, let's hit up some hate mail quickly. Received plenty of it after Keon Coleman coughed up the first pass of training camp. Love this one from Celsius insulting my camera work, which I do admit has not been the best while trying to shoot around 85 people blocking my view because the Bills' shitty PR department won't credential the hardest working reporter covering the team. But hey, I digress. From Celsius, my 4-year-old can record a better video than this. You're panning around like you're 90, man. Get a grip. So was the camera work that of a child or a senior citizen? I'm a little confused on Celsius's comment there. But this from Joey. Those insecurities of yours really show up in these tweets. We get it already. You hate your life. Joey, that really couldn't be further from the truth. I love my life, love being alive. Not as much as I love 9/11 Tavern chicken wings, but still, my life's pretty cool. This from JD and Webfield. Don't do this. Aren't there enough knee-jerk hot take personalities in sports media already? Not sure posting a video or not sure posting a video really does you any that's breaking up on me. But regardless, I don't know how a video just showing what happened is a hot take or a knee-jerk reaction. It's a video showing you literally what happened on the field. I wasn't providing a take. I posted Keon Coleman dropped the ball. You can't make this up. I mean, maybe some do, but I didn't consider it a knee-jerk or hot take. But hey, to each their own, I guess. And finally, this from Dalton. It's the first week of practice. Stop trying to build a negative narrative. Again, I'm posting video of what happens at practice. It's not me building a negative narrative. No one accused me of building a narrative a year ago when I was posting all the great things about Keon Coleman. They just ate it up with a spoon. But you post one negative video and everyone accuses you of hot takes and knee-jerk reactions. I think all of you out there need to get somewhat of a grip, as Celsius mentioned earlier. But that's enough hate mail for today. Keep it coming. I love hearing from my fans on X and otherwise, so make sure to keep those comments coming. But that's going to do it for tonight's show. A little bit of abbreviated due to some impending technical issues that might come up here. So I appreciate everyone for listening and watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Rate it as well. Anything you could do to support would be greatly appreciated. Also, be sure to follow along throughout training camp for breaking news, weekly and sometimes daily podcasts, and much, much more coverage coming on Alex Brasky Unfiltered, both on YouTube and Substack, where I'll be posting my daily takeaways and more Bills coverage moving forward. Also, please start leaving your comments and questions on the live podcast. Want to get the interaction up a little bit. Questions are always welcome. You can tell me I look ugly. You can tell me this podcast sucks. Anything you could do to help liven up the show would be much, much appreciated. But I already do appreciate all of you tuning in. So That's going to do it for tonight's show. We'll be back maybe tomorrow. I'll let everybody know on my X account when the next podcast is coming out. But Bills back at training camp on Monday, 8:30 a.m. practice start, and I'll be there at St. John Fisher University. But I want to thank you all again for tuning in. Have a great night, everyone. Stay true.